On August 24th, a train station collapsed in Moscow. In ISU, Russia is being blown up on Independence Day. Festive strikes from our armed forces against Russia. The railway station is ablaze. The tracks have been blown up. Muscovites are in a panic. What are we supposed to do here? This is where childhood... The railways are burning, a freight train is on fire. Hundreds of passengers have been evacuated. Traffic has been halted. We're getting out. Muscovites report the roof collapsed after a powerful explosion. The tracks are burning. The station is engulfed in smoke. Look, everyone, seriously, this is a disaster. This is a complete disaster. Trains have stopped all over the country. This is not just a blow to the capital. This is a blow to Russia's logistics. The first car... Shit. Damn, why didn't they move the passenger train out of the way? How could they have moved it? There it is, damn it. Airports are currently experiencing widespread chaos. Aeroflot is completely paralyzed, its essential servers have been destroyed, and numerous flights have been regrettably cancelled. Meanwhile, Russia is restricting gasoline exports. And this is just the beginning. The economy is going into a tailspin. The country is frozen in flames. We'll discuss all this with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, personal enemy of Putin and Kadyrov, Ruslan Kutayev.
Good afternoon, Dasha. Greetings to you.
Ruslan Avkaftievich, the railways are under attack. In the Moscow region and Rostov region, drones attacked 5 regions at once. The drone is flying close. In Salsk, there's a fire at the railway station. A freight train is burning. It hit hard, guys. The passenger train was urgently evacuated. We are blowing up convoys, stations, and railway junctions. The railway station is ablaze. Here it is, the Severnaya power plant. We're in. Aviation is paralyzed. A hacker attack has crashed Aeroflot's IT infrastructure. 7,000 servers have been destroyed and hundreds of flights have been cancelled. The FSB is holding a meeting because the losses exceed $50 million. Passengers in Moscow are trapped. Sheremetyevo, Pulkovo, and Zhukovsky airports are paralyzed. Panic, crush, telegram crash. The FSB is cutting off communications and the internet in many regions of Russia. We are entering a phase of total pressure on the rails. Railway. Fuck. Across the sky. Across the vast and boundless sea stretching far beyond the horizon. Sanhabzik, what do you say?
Amazing events. It was especially beautiful when the key railway station in Salsk, Rostov region was destroyed. I know those places very well. There's such heavy traffic there. Everything coming from the Urals, from Siberia, all the support for the war passes through there. And suddenly they destroy exactly this part of the railway. These are huge disruptions. This is simply an immeasurable loss of support for the war, support for various things. We know that certain regions and military units, they don't just refuel in Rostov, for example. They send tankers with fuel from their own regions. And suddenly that fuel is stuck. And now Ukrainian intelligence is bombing the railway trains with their drones, and everything is burning there as well. An amazing move. Absolutely the right thing to do. This should have been done a long time ago, but at least it's happening now. So the entire development, let's say the comprehensive and vital support for the front lines, all of that is currently being completely and utterly destroyed. As for Aeroflot, the counterstrike was an incredible job. They successfully managed to completely destroy just within Aeroflot's very own internal recovery system, specifically in this sophisticated electronic Aeroflot system, a staggering $50 million. And they emphatically state that this significant issue will undoubtedly drag on for a very, very long period of time. This means disruptions. This means flights. Russia is a huge country. And if Aeroflot stops, if the planes stop flying, that essentially means a huge part of Russia is cut off. It's as if it no longer even feels like a part of Russia, no longer connecting it. It falls away. And Moscow's sovereignty over that territory also disappears. Even if we don't talk about the economic aspect, from a political standpoint, this is a tremendous blow. Logistics have been destroyed and are being systematically dismantled. And so this work that's being done regarding the planes and the passengers, yes, passengers are uncomfortable. And that's right. That's how it should be. The criminal government needs to be removed. And only then can people go on vacation somewhere, relax, and, enjoy themselves. And meanwhile, Ukrainians are being killed and Ukrainian cities are being destroyed. No, this is a profound discomfort that they are experiencing now. And they should truly experience and fully comprehend what the resilient people of Ukraine are enduring every single day, facing immense challenges and hardships. That's why these actions are correct, clear, consistent, and can only be welcomed.
Ruslan Fomik, but all this is happening against the backdrop of blocked spare parts supplies and the refusal to service aircraft. We see planes falling apart, engines failing, and the FSB is holding meetings with the Minister of Transport, with the ministry, and then later even summons Putin for a dressing down. Well, it's a very serious problem if the FSB is getting involved.
Of course, it's a very serious problem. Of course, they can't do anything about it. As for engine manufacturing, when the Ukrainian company Motosich sided with Ukraine and stopped cooperating with Russia, Russia's aircraft production basically came to a halt because Ukraine was supplying the engines. They tried to make their own, but it was a complete failure. They can't do anything. They just simply can't do anything at all. And even for the ordinary bearings required for the railways, these are very heat-resistant bearings, ones that operate effectively under heavy loads, which were previously supplied by Japan and the United States for their railway systems. Even China does not possess the capability to produce such high-quality bearing components, let's say. And so when they stopped being, not to mention the airplanes that are crashing, it's truly a tragedy for the people who died. But now planes will crash more often because the aircraft are worn out, there are no spare parts, and engines are failing. And as for the extensive railway systems, simply the critical lack of essential bearings is currently stopping a very significant number of railway cars, encompassing both passenger and freight vehicles, from operating effectively.
Military analysts claim that there wouldn't have been an aviation collapse if Russia had simply closed its airspace, because it is waging a full-scale war against Ukraine and its airspace should be closed. It is at war. But Putin will never do that, because for Putin that would be a sign of weakness, and so it's impossible. Ruslan Fomich, I noticed that many regional governors are saying that the FSB is jamming communications, that Russian security services are jamming communications and the internet, and that Russians need to get used to this, living without telegram, without communication, without the internet. In essence, the country is turning into a concentration camp.
Without a doubt, they are already having very serious discussions now, and there are hints that they will ban WhatsApp as well. They want to completely cut people off from, let's say, alternative information, completely isolate them. They've presented their own max, after all. First of all, hardly anyone, or at least very few people, will want to stay only on this max. And secondly, this max will by no means work exactly the same way as other social networks do. And all of this taken together is bad news for the Kremlin and the FSB, because people have started consuming a different kind of informational product. Then this is no longer the enthusiastic audience that used to applaud and ask for victory, to reach Kiev, to reach Lviv. They have now very seriously encountered the problem that the Russian authorities, and not just Putin, but perhaps primarily the FSB, are risking the lives of Russians without batting an eye. And they will continue to do so. On the railways, on airplanes, at train stations, anywhere, at sea, in the air, they will risk the lives of Russia and Russians. But all of this is simply just to meticulously avoid any image losses and to carefully preserve their inherent power. That is the fundamental and sole basis of precisely how they operate. You see, Dasha, they know they've truly lost. And now they just need to bide their time to get into a sort of current or direction, a track, where they could somehow keep their power with some semblance of dignity. Not a complete destruction or discrediting of power, but at least preserving some kind of face for the authorities. That's exactly what they're busy with. They couldn't care less about Russians. They don't care about their deaths at all. We know what's happening at the front.
Ruslan Fomich, Trump gave Putin 10 days, and the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, has already officially stated that most likely Russia's war against Ukraine will end soon, or at least the acute phase will. What do you attribute this to? Do you think that Putin's ultimatum will actually be enforced? And what consequences will Russia face if it violates it? That is, if 10 days pass and it doesn't cease fire. What is Trump prepared to do? What consequences will there be for Russia and for Putin personally?
I think the first thing Trump will do, he's already a hostage. He has been excessively clear, precise, and explicit despite all his talkativeness and the fact that he often backtracks or disavows his own words. Now he himself has become a hostage to all his statements. Even within his own party, they won't understand. In Trump's administration, they won't understand if he acts differently. I can even guess how this will play out. All his threats are these tariffs, or rather the sanctions he talked about. These sanctions, in the form of certain tariffs, he will increase them, but not in the context of trade relations between Russia and the US. That's only 3 billion. Here, the sanctions will be secondary sanctions, specifically against China, India, Brazil, and Turkey. So who exactly are the primary buyers of Russian oil and natural gas resources? I think these sanctions will actually be imposed. I don't think they will be enforced with the full severity that was prepared in the United States Congress, at least, especially considering that Trump is now not just offended by Putin. He has started to actually hate him a little because all of Trump's expectations were rejected, all his initiatives. He simply expected that Putin would meet him halfway. And now at this point, he is going to start acting tough. And all his toughness will come down to the fact that sanctions will be imposed, not the harshest sanctions, but still tough enough for Russia. The very fact that if these sanctions, as we are saying, these secondary sanctions against countries that buy oil and gas are imposed, that's already a blow, a very serious blow to Russia's already, as they say, collapsing economy. Because after that, no, we can see what's happening in Russia right now. What's happening in Russia? They're already killing even the Minister of Transport, the former governor of the Kursk region. Just look at what's going on. The Deputy Speaker of the State Duma attacked the chairwoman of the Federation Council of the Russian Federation. What's the reason? And the reason is that now Putin is saying, I let you steal as much as you wanted. I corrupted you. Today the country needs money. Come on, share the money. And no one wants to share. After all, the sacrificial killing of that Minister of Transport was a reminder to ministers and governors, if you don't quickly contribute money to support the army, the same thing will happen to you. And that's why the conflict is escalating now. It's already reached the highest level. If there is a conflict at the level of the deputy chairman of the State Duma and the chairman of the Federation Council, one that is brought out and discussed in the investigative committee, this is the peak. This is already a crisis of political power in the Russian Federation.
The death of Ramzan Kadyrov, an emergency meeting in the Kremlin. The FSB is in a panic. For several days now, Ramzan Kadyrov has disappeared from the radar. There hasn't been a single live video, only photoshopped pictures taken back in the spring, all in jackets, most likely in March. According to leaks, Kadyrov tried to commit suicide in Turkey to drown himself in Bodrum. In Sevastopol, they are hanging up his portraits as if it's already a farewell. And in Grozny, there is silence. Has Kadyrov died, or are they just hiding him to transfer the power structure? Who is the successor? What is happening inside Chechnya? And why is the FSB assembling emergency teams in the Kremlin under the pretext of regional coordination?
Indeed, there was information coming from Turkey. Naturally, I have my own reliable sources within Turkey, and from these very sources, I genuinely did learn that Ramzan Kadyrov flew to Bodrum. He was indeed there, enjoying a vacation at that specific location. When, according to the information I have, while he was swimming, he started feeling unwell. They called an ambulance, he was taken away, and so on. And at this point, any version could be equally plausible. I want to talk about another exclusive piece of information that I received a few days ago. Here, I was at a friend's place and someone arrived to see him from Grozny or Moscow. I'm not exactly sure. So when we were talking, well, let's just say the source is trustworthy. He said that indeed Kadyrov is in a very serious condition. And the most important, the key thing I heard was this. There have been various theories about his illness. Some say he was poisoned by the FSB, and that despite the intervention of different doctors from European to Middle Eastern, the source of the damage, the effect of this poison or toxic substance, it's simply impossible to stop this decay in his body. And that he is in a serious condition, and from time to time some kind of medical intervention straightens him out so that he can walk. We can see that. I observed very carefully myself. His last official appearance was recorded a few days ago when he was in Grozny, meeting people on the streets of Grozny, on Aslanbek Sheripov Street, if I remember correctly, where he was talking with women. Well, it was clear that the man is ill, he could barely move, and indeed his illness, his ailment, is overcoming him. Once again, I'm not insisting on any particular version. Some say it's his pancreas, others say his kidneys have been replaced, still others say it's poisoning. Personally, I'm inclined to believe that poisoning is, after all, Moscow's driving force. They get rid of all those they don't like precisely through poisoning. And it's well known to everyone, and has been for a long time, that the FSB and Kadyrov are in quite a serious confrontation. They are doing everything they can to neutralize him. They are doing everything possible to weaken Putin, because Kadyrov and his followers are indeed a very significant force in protecting Putin. And all of this evidence, taken comprehensively and considered together in principle, may very strongly indicate that Kadyrov's current health status, or indeed the significant and concerning lack thereof, is actively being influenced by powerful and determined external forces who are fully prepared and willing to do absolutely everything within their considerable power to effectively neutralize him and his influence completely.
Ruslan Kamkamzic, you have just shared some very exclusive information. So we can assume that if the Russian special services eliminated Kadyrov by poisoning him, they are also preparing for the elimination of Putin. In other words, are they, so to speak, weakening the protective circle around the country's top leader?
Absolutely right. First and foremost, this is aimed at weakening Putin. Here, unlike Prigozhin or others like Kolokoltsev or Bastrikin, who basically switched sides to the FSB, Putin was left with only two forces he relied on, the National Guard under Zolotov and Kadyrov. And it should be said very clearly that Putin relied on and trusted Kadyrov and his men even more than Zolotov. And this force needed to be neutralized. From this perspective, in recent years, the FSB's active behavior was directed toward this goal. We witnessed how much material discrediting Kadyrov was released, which later turned out to be fake and did not correspond to reality. Putin barely had time to defend Kadyrov. And why is that? Because Putin wasn't so much worried about Kadyrov or standing up for him, but rather for himself, since it was his own protection at stake. And that's precisely why, I think, we can quite reasonably and logically assume here that the formidable force opposing Kadyrov will undoubtedly do absolutely everything humanly possible to neutralize him, to eliminate him, to pursue him relentlessly in any conceivable way. And therefore, any expectations here are impossible. Any ending to this story is possible, and at any time.
Ruslan Kamkamzic, what does it mean if the FSB has gone against Putin himself? Is that really the case? And what does that mean then?
Many individuals try to actively avoid this, to truly run away from it. But it really is the undeniable case, I am absolutely convinced, because Vladimir Putin is now a hostage of the war he started in Ukraine. He has entered such a phase that now, if he tries to stop the war, he will have to tell the Russian people, his, let's say, core electorate, those suffering from the most severe form of fascism, Russism, whatever the percentage may be, he will have to tell these people that he has not achieved his goal, that he missed the mark. In that case, the leader must be replaced with another. In this regard, Putin is entangled. He can't do anything, but the FSB is not. The FSB is not only well represented in Russian power structures, they are the cementing force of all the components of Russian authority. Why? Because this personnel policy was carried out exclusively with the approval and recommendation of the Russian FSB when they were together, as they say, on the same team and trusted each other. And now consider the children of prominent figures such as Patrushev, Ivanov, and Bortnikov, basically anyone you might name, for instance, Kemezov, or indeed anyone at all. These individuals are all people who have successfully gone through the rigorous training and educational programs of the FSB school. Their children have grown up. Some of them are already heading ministries or are deputy prime ministers, like Patrushev's son, or leading agencies and major corporations, serious corporations at that, financial, gas, oil, and so on. And now it so happens that the future, the prospects of these descendants of these FSB generals are tied to Putin's actions. It would be much better and easier for them to give up Putin, no matter how it's done. They could shoot him, claim that Putin left a note and shot himself, and then blame everything on him. There are 1,000 different scenarios here. And again, we come back to the fact that regarding Kadyrov, actions are being taken against him to weaken Putin, specifically to get one step closer to Putin, in order to neutralize him, or if you want, to eliminate him. This is how the issue stands now in the Russian state.
Ruslan Kamgevich, who could be Ramzan Kadyrov's successor in that case? His son, who has already been introduced to Putin, who is already officially married?
No, I don't think so. I'm even convinced that in this situation, when there are active events all over Russia related to the war in Ukraine, they can't put that boy in charge. Although there is another option here. The thing is, if the FSB wants to take full control and Chechnya is no longer governed autonomously by Kadyrov, but instead is run directly by the FSB. And then let's say they could assign one of their own FSB people to oversee this boy, and in that case, the situation would develop in a completely different way. But I don't think they'll go down that path because the people Kadyrov relies on are already extremely powerful groups, extremely powerful. They have gained strength. They haven't just gained strength. These are generals, active generals, people with enormous wealth, people who have built up vast networks of connections. And now, if the FSB simply tries to somehow, by getting rid of them, take control, it won't work. They will have to be taken into account. At the very least, their interests will have to be respected. It's hard to say right now. I'm not saying that someone like Delimkanov or Daudov, for example, will be put in Kadyrov's place. That too, I believe, would lead to conflict. Why? These are rival factions of equal strength. If one faction is put in charge, say, of governing the Chechen Republic, it will create a conflict with the other two factions, which had equal power. And so in this situation, it's very difficult to judge. And here, this is the only thing. This is important, Dasha, for our viewers to hear. Here, it won't be Putin making the decision. If Putin were the one making the decisions unambiguously, they would have put Kadyrov's uncle, Ramzan Kadyrov's uncle Magomed, at the head of the Chechen Republic. Why? Because in order to preserve those resources, huge billion-dollar resources, to maintain and manage them, it has to be someone from close family. The boy, no, I think he's too much of a boy. We remember when Ramzan Kadyrov came to power, they changed the Chechen constitution because he was too young by age. I think the requirement was 35 years old and he was younger than that. They had to change the constitution to accommodate him. Well, excuse me, when someone is 30 years old and they change the constitution for him, and when a boy is 17 years old. These are completely incomparable things that don't fit even within the simple, even the criminal Russian logic. And that's why there will be other options here.
Dear audience, please write in the comments what you think might happen after the death of Ramzan Kadyrov. Does this mean that the FSB will go against Putin? Putin's days are numbered. There will be a military or forceful coup. Who could be put in Putin's place? Who could be put in Kadyrov's place? In the comments, let us know where you're watching from and leave a few kind words in support of our duo and Ruslan Kutaev. Ruslan Kamgevich, now the most important question. Could the death of Kadyrov create a zone of turbulence in various republics? This is very important. And could it trigger the fragmentation of Russia?
No, here we need to clearly understand Kadyrov and his influence on neighboring republics. Some experts, without any real knowledge, have said foolish things about this. No, Kadyrov has never tried to control or influence neighboring regions. Absolutely. He was satisfied with what he had. And secondly, if the situation changes within the Chechen Republic itself, it won't affect the neighboring regions, but it will impact the Chechen Republic itself, the internal balance, and the behavior of the population. Right now, despite all their hatred toward Kadyrov, the FSB understands that the protest-minded segment of the Chechen Republic's population is enormous. If they try to make any moves, any military actions, say pursuit operations in any case, out of these three groups, if any group ends up on the side against the FSB, then the territory of the Chechen Republic, the overwhelming majority of the population, will support anyone who goes against the Russian FSB. And this would be an entirely new situation within the Chechen Republic itself. This very process will also affect neighboring regions. It's not just about Kadyrov's death or a change of power. No. If there are any significant military actions, any deliberate actions specifically aimed at fundamentally undermining those three crucial pillars that Kadyrov has consistently relied upon. If this provokes any actions within the Chechen Republic itself, among the population that has so far remained in a neutral position, waiting for Chechen forces, Ichkerian forces, to defend independence. But if suddenly the FSB starts to act actively there, and some force, be it Dilimkanov, Dautov, or someone else, provokes any actions against the FSB, they will be supported. They will receive active support. And then it will become a very serious confrontation, especially given Russia's lack of strength. It will be a serious confrontation.
Ruslan Kamdievich, we are approaching the most important question. If the FSB and Russian special services are already betting on the fall of the Putin regime, does that mean the FSB has already developed a successor plan? That's the question. And who could be this successor, this new Putin? Because as we understand in Russia, it is the FSB that installs the president.
I think this is already known, at least within FSB circles. Let's say FSB supporters. Most likely it will be Patrushev's son, who is currently Deputy Prime Minister. He was the Minister of Agriculture. And there was a certain arrangement. Patrushev Sr. would leave his post as Secretary of the Security Council to become an advisor, and his son would be promoted and appointed to a higher position. After all, Patrushev and the FSB have placed all their bets specifically on his son in order to retain political power. I don't see any other candidates today who could claim to be successors to political power. It should be said that this power, despite all its competitiveness and internal conflicts, is a power that they themselves have organized. If anyone is to be the successor to this power, it can only be Patrushev's son. Why not someone else? Well, for example, the governor of the Tula region? No, he can't, because that would no longer be Putin's choice. If it were Putin's choice, the situation would be different. But when Putin is neutralized and someone else comes in, it will be a temporary government. I don't think the father, most likely the bet will be placed on Patrushev's son.
Dear audience, right now together with Ruslan Kutayev, we are discussing the complete paralysis of the skies, railways and aviation in Russia, because the attacks will continue and the consequences for Putin and the economy. Please like this video. Write a few kind words in the comments to support Ukraine, the armed forces of Ukraine, and our duo with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev. Ruslan Kamdievich and I meet every week to discuss important and current events. Ruslan Kamdievich, thank you. And as always, see you next week.
All the best, Dasha. Take care. Dear viewers, I support Dasha. I urge you, let's reach 1 million. But when we need to act quickly, dear viewers.